September 20th, 1940. Washington, D.C. Munitions Building. 14:20 hours. Genevieve Grotjan, 27, statistician with the Army Signal Intelligence Service, stared at columns of intercepted Japanese cipher text she'd analyzed for 18 months. Thousands of encrypted messages sent between Tokyo and Japanese embassies worldwide. Messages encrypted by a machine the Americans called Purple, a machine they'd never seen. For 18 months, the SIS team led by William Friedman had attempted to break Purple without success. They'd broken the previous Japanese diplomatic code, called Red in 1936. Purple, introduced in February 1939, proved far more resistant. Every day, more Purple messages arrived at SIS headquarters. Every day, they remained indecipherable. Japanese diplomats communicated freely, confident their codes were unbreakable. And for 18 months, they were right. But on this September afternoon, Grotjan noticed something, a pattern in how certain letter groups repeated across messages, a mathematical relationship that shouldn't exist if the code was random. It wasn't much, just a correlation. But it was enough. What happened in the next 4 weeks would give America its most valuable intelligence source of the entire war. And Japan would never know their most secret diplomatic communications had been compromised. By September 1940, the world was already at war, though America remained neutral. Germany occupied most of Western Europe. Britain stood alone. Japan expanded across China and eyed Southeast Asia. In this environment, diplomatic communications between governments carried enormous strategic importance. Nations negotiated alliances, threatened enemies, planned military operations, all through encrypted diplomatic messages. The ability to read an adversary's diplomatic traffic meant knowing their intentions, plans, and internal divisions before they acted. Cryptography, the science of secret communications, had become a critical intelligence tool. The great powers employed sophisticated cipher machines to encrypt sensitive messages. Germany used Enigma machines. Japan used machines Americans codenamed Red and Purple. America used Sagaba. Britain used Typex. All these systems were designed to create encryption that human cryptanalysts couldn't break even with unlimited time. The Japanese Purple cipher machine, officially called Alphabetical Typewriter 97, was introduced by the Japanese Foreign Office in February 1939 to replace the previous Red machine, which Japan suspected might be compromised. Purple represented significant advancement. Where Red used telephone stepping switches in a relatively straightforward configuration, Purple used more complex switch arrangements that created billions of possible cipher combinations. The machine separated the alphabet into 2 groups. Vowels A, E, I, O, U, Y formed the 6s group. The remaining 20 letters formed the 20s group. Each group was encrypted separately using different switching systems. This created complexity that Japanese cryptographers believed made Purple effectively unbreakable without capturing an actual machine. America's Signal Intelligence Service, a small section within the Army Signal Corps, had responsibility for breaking foreign codes. In 1940, SIS employed about 20 people, mostly mathematicians and linguists working in cramped offices in the Munitions Building in Washington. The chief of SIS was William Friedman, 48, a cryptanalyst who'd worked in the field since World War I. Friedman had successfully broken numerous foreign codes, including Japan's Red machine. But Purple stymied even his expertise. The SIS team attacking Purple included Frank Rowlett, a cryptanalyst who'd worked with Friedman for years, Dr. Solomon Kolbach and Dr. Abraham Sinkoff, both mathematicians, and Genevieve Grotjan, hired in 1939 as a junior cryptanalyst after earning a mathematics degree from the University at Buffalo. Grotjan was one of the few women working in cryptanalysis, a field dominated by men. Her mathematical ability was exceptional. Her persistence was legendary among colleagues. The team worked with intercepts of Purple messages provided by military and civilian listening stations that monitored Japanese diplomatic radio transmissions. These stations copied the encrypted messages, but couldn't decrypt them. The encrypted text, strings of apparently random letters, went to SIS for analysis. Breaking a code without the encryption machine requires identifying patterns in the encrypted text that reveal information about the encryption process. But purple messages appeared completely random. There were no repeated phrases, no obvious letter frequency patterns, no cribs or known plaintext that could provide entry points. The machine's complexity defeated traditional cryptanalytic approaches. For 18 months, progress was minimal. The team determined that purple used separate encryption for vowels and consonants. They identified the 6s and 20s grouping. They understood purple was machine-generated rather than hand-encrypted, but they couldn't determine the machine's internal wiring or stepping sequence that would allow decryption. Friedman drove his team relentlessly. The team worked 6-day weeks, often 10 to 12 hours daily. The intellectual frustration of knowing that a breakable pattern existed somewhere in the messages, but being unable to find it, created psychological pressure. Several team members developed stress-related health problems. Friedman himself suffered a nervous breakdown in late 1940, forcing temporary hospitalization. Breaking purple became an obsession that consumed personal lives and mental health. Genevieve Grotjan approached the problem differently from her male colleagues. While they focused on trying to determine the machine's mechanical workings, Grotjan focused on pure mathematics. She analyzed patterns in the encrypted text without preconceptions about what the machine might look like. She created charts plotting letter frequencies, position correlations, relationships between messages sent on the same day. Hundreds of charts filled with numbers and patterns that meant nothing until suddenly they meant everything. On September 20, 1940, Grotjan was analyzing a series of purple messages sent from Tokyo to multiple embassies on the same date. She noticed that certain letter positions in these messages, when compared across all the messages, showed statistical correlations that shouldn't exist in purely random encryption. The correlations were subtle. A less skilled mathematician might have dismissed them as coincidence, but Grotjan recognized them as significant. The pattern suggested that the purple machine's stepping switches didn't step randomly, but followed a predictable sequence based on switch positions. If this was true, it meant the machine's internal state could be calculated from the encrypted text. And if internal state could be calculated, the entire encryption system could be reverse-engineered. Grotjan took her charts to Frank Rowlett. Rowlett immediately grasped the significance. He brought William Friedman's deputy, as Friedman was still on medical leave. The team gathered around Grotjan's desk. For the next 3 hours, they worked through the implications of her discovery. By end of day, September 20th, the SIS team had confidence they'd found purple's fundamental weakness. Over the next 3 weeks, they worked frantically to exploit this breakthrough. Using Grotjan's correlation patterns, they calculated how the purple machine's stepping switches must be wired. They determined the switch stepping sequences. They figured out how the 6s and 20s were processed separately. Piece by piece, they reconstructed purple's entire operation without ever seeing the actual machine. By mid-October 1940, SIS could read purple messages. Not quickly, not easily, but they could decrypt them. The first fully decrypted purple message, dated October 12th, was from Tokyo to the Japanese embassy in Washington regarding diplomatic negotiations. The content wasn't particularly significant, but the achievement was monumental. America could now read Japan's most secret diplomatic communications. However, simply breaking the code wasn't enough for practical intelligence use. Hand decryption of each purple message took hours of tedious work. The Navy and War Departments needed current intelligence, not yesterday's news decrypted too late to be useful. The solution was building an American analog of the purple machine that could decrypt messages quickly. Frank Rowlett led the team constructing the purple analog. They used telephone stepping switches purchased commercially, since these were the likely components in the original Japanese machine. Based on their cryptanalytic reconstruction, they wired the switches in the configuration their mathematics indicated. In August 1940, even before Grotjan's breakthrough, Rowlett had begun building prototype analog machines based on incomplete understanding. After September 20th, they knew exactly how to complete the construction. The first purple analog machine was completed in November 1940. When intercepts were fed into it using the calculated switch settings, plain-text Japanese messages emerged. The machine worked. America had successfully cryptanalyzed and reconstructed one of the world's most sophisticated cipher systems without ever capturing or photographing the original device. It was perhaps the greatest cryptanalytic achievement in history to that date. The intelligence derived from purple decrypts was codenamed Magic. Access to Magic was restricted to the absolute highest levels of government. President Roosevelt received Magic summaries. The Secretaries of War and Navy saw it. A handful of senior military commanders had access, but distribution was severely limited to prevent Japan from learning their codes were broken. Magic provided extraordinary insight into Japanese diplomatic strategy through 1940 and 1941. American leaders read messages between Tokyo and Japanese ambassadors revealing internal Japanese government debates, negotiating positions, and strategic intentions. When Japanese diplomats in Washington negotiated with the State Department, American officials knew Tokyo's real position from Magic intercepts before the diplomats revealed it. The most significant Magic intercepts came in late 1941 as tensions between America and Japan increased. On November 28, 1941, Tokyo sent a message to its Washington embassy stating that negotiations must be concluded by November 29 or relations would be broken off. Magic revealed this deadline to American leaders immediately. When the deadline passed without agreement, Magic intercepts showed Tokyo preparing for military action, though specific targets weren't revealed in diplomatic traffic. On December 6, 1941, Tokyo sent a long 14-part message to its Washington embassy instructing ambassadors to break relations with America. American cryptanalysts decrypted this message Saturday evening, hours before Japanese diplomats received it. The final part, directing delivery to the State Department at 1 p.m. Washington time on December 7th, suggested synchronized timing with military action. But where and when weren't clear from diplomatic traffic. The attack on Pearl Harbor came while American intelligence officers were still analyzing the significance of the 1 p.m. delivery timing. Magic had provided strategic warning that war was imminent, but tactical details about Pearl Harbor came through military codes, not diplomatic purple traffic. The limitation of intelligence is that it shows what's happening in the channels you've penetrated. If critical information flows through different channels, you remain blind to it. Throughout the war, Magic continued providing valuable intelligence about Japanese diplomatic activities. American leaders knew Japanese relations with Germany and their European allies. They knew about Japanese efforts to negotiate peace feelers. They knew internal Japanese government debates about strategy. This information didn't win battles directly, but it shaped American strategic decisions with knowledge of enemy intentions no previous war had provided. The Japanese never discovered purple was compromised. They continued using it throughout the war, confident in its security. Some Japanese officials suspected American intelligence capabilities, but attributed success to other sources. The possibility that purple itself was broken seemed too unlikely to seriously consider. The psychological security of believing your codes are unbreakable is dangerous. It creates confidence that encourages communication of sensitive information that prudence might otherwise restrict. After the war, Japanese cryptographers learned that purple had been broken in 1940. Their reaction was shock and disbelief. They'd analyzed purple's security extensively and concluded it was effectively unbreakable with 1940s technology. Learning that American cryptanalysts had not only broken it, but built working replica machines without ever seeing the original seemed almost impossible. Captain Risaburo Ito, who'd worked in Japanese naval intelligence during the war, was interviewed by American cryptanalysts in 1946. His testimony reflected professional respect mixed with dismay. We believed purple was secure because the number of possible combinations was astronomical. Even with captured machines, which we were certain America didn't have, determining the daily key settings would require computing power that didn't exist in the 1940s. Learning that your team broke purple through pure mathematical analysis and built replica machines that worked perfectly seems like something from science fiction. Our cryptographers were skilled. Your cryptographers were apparently better. The breaking of purple demonstrated several principles that remain relevant in cryptography and intelligence today. First, no code is unbreakable if opponents have sufficient skill, time, and intercepted traffic to analyze. Security comes from making breaking sufficiently difficult and time-consuming that intelligence is obsolete before it's obtained. Purple was secure for 18 months, then it wasn't. Second, human patterns and mechanical predictability create vulnerabilities that pure mathematics can exploit. Grotjan's breakthrough came from recognizing patterns humans created when operating the machine. Third, the value of intelligence comes not just from obtaining information, but from preventing adversaries from knowing you have it. America's greatest achievement with Purple wasn't breaking it. It was keeping the break secret for 5 years while exploiting it continuously. This required extraordinary security discipline. Magic material was handled with precautions exceeding those for any other classified information. Personnel with access were minimal and vetted extensively. No operational decisions could obviously depend on magic intelligence, or Japanese might suspect compromise. The balance between using intelligence and protecting the source required constant judgment. Today, the story of Purple's breaking is taught at the National Security Agency and intelligence schools worldwide, not as history but as foundational methodology. The techniques Grotjan and the SIS team developed remain relevant to modern cryptanalysis. The organizational lessons about security, distribution, and intelligence use apply directly to current operations. At the National Cryptologic Museum at Fort Meade, Maryland, a reconstructed Purple machine is displayed alongside one of the American analog machines built by Rowlett's team. Visitors can see both the Japanese original and American copy side by side. The complexity of the switching mechanisms is apparent. The fact that American cryptanalysts reverse-engineered this complexity from encrypted text alone seems remarkable even now. With modern computing making cryptanalysis conceptually simpler, Genevieve Grotjan's contribution was recognized belatedly. During the war, her work was highly classified. After the war, she continued working in cryptology for the new National Security Agency, but remained unknown publicly. In the 1970s, as Purple's story was gradually declassified, Grotjan's role became known. She received formal recognition, including the NSA's Exceptional Civilian Service Award. But she remained modest about her achievement, until her death in 2006. An interview with Grotjan in 1982 captured her perspective. On the Purple breakthrough, I was doing my job, which was analyzing patterns in encrypted messages. I happened to notice a correlation that turned out to be significant. But it wasn't genius, it was persistence. We'd analyzed thousands of messages looking for patterns. Eventually we found one. If I hadn't found it that day, someone else would have found something similar eventually. The real credit goes to Friedman for building the team and creating the environment where we could focus on the problem long enough to solve it. Grotjan's modesty was typical of the cryptanalytic community, but her mathematical insight was extraordinary. The pattern she noticed was subtle enough that the team had missed it for 18 months, despite intensive analysis. Her specific contribution was recognizing significance in correlations others had likely seen but dismissed. The broader lesson from Purple extends beyond cryptography to problem-solving generally. Difficult problems often require sustained effort over long periods before breakthrough occurs. The team worked 18 months before Grotjan's discovery. 18 months of frustration, dead ends, failed approaches. Many organizations would have abandoned the effort or reassigned resources, but SIS persisted because the potential value justified the effort. When breakthrough came, all the previous investment suddenly paid off. This pattern appears repeatedly in research, development, intelligence, and innovation. Long periods of apparent failure precede sudden success. The key is maintaining effort and morale through the failure period long enough to reach success. Organizations that can sustain focus on difficult problems longer than competitors gain advantage. Organizations that switch between priorities too quickly never achieve breakthrough on any of them. The purple breakthrough also demonstrated the value of diverse perspectives on difficult problems. Grotjan approached the problem differently from her male colleagues. She focused on pure mathematical patterns, while they tried to deduce mechanical operations. Her different approach led to the critical insight. Organizations that include diverse perspectives and encourage different analytical approaches have better chance of solving hard problems than organizations where everyone thinks similarly. William Friedman recovered from his nervous breakdown and returned to lead SIS through the war. His leadership established American cryptologic capabilities that continue today through NSA. But he always credited his team, especially Grotjan, Rowlett, Kullback, and Sinkov, for the purple breakthrough. In his memoirs, written in the 1960s, Friedman emphasized that cryptanalysis is collaborative work, requiring diverse skills and sustained effort. Breaking purple took mathematicians, linguists, engineers, and intuitive thinkers working together for 18 months. No individual could have done it alone. The team succeeded because each member brought different skills and perspectives. When people ask who broke purple, the answer is we broke purple. Team success is the only kind of success that matters in cryptanalysis or most difficult endeavors. That collaborative approach defined American cryptanalysis throughout the war. While individual brilliance mattered, team structure and sustained effort mattered more. This organizational approach to intelligence proved as important as any individual breakthrough. It created a system that could tackle multiple difficult problems simultaneously and could recover when individual efforts failed. The Japanese purple machine was an excellent cipher device. Japanese cryptographers were skilled professionals. Japan maintained good communications security throughout the war, but they faced an opponent who invested more resources in cryptanalysis, maintained focus longer on difficult problems, and achieved breakthrough through sustained team effort. In competition, whether warfare or business or research, the side that can maintain effort on difficult problems longest often wins. The side that quits too soon never knows how close they were to success. SIS worked on purple for 18 months. Suppose they'd given up after 16 months. They would have failed completely, and history would have been very different. Persistence beats brilliance when problems are hard enough that brilliance alone isn't sufficient. Purple was hard enough that persistence mattered more than individual genius. The team had genius, but they also had persistence. The combination was unbeatable. Japan encrypted their secrets with a machine they trusted completely. America broke that machine through mathematics they trusted completely. Trust was justified for 18 months. Then it wasn't. The lesson is simple. Assume your adversary is as smart as you are. Assume your systems will eventually be compromised. Assume that security today doesn't guarantee security tomorrow. Keep testing, keep improving, keep assuming the worst. Japan assumed purple was secure and stopped questioning. America assumed no code was permanently secure and kept attacking. Different assumptions led to different outcomes. In intelligence, as in life, assumptions matter as much as facts. Question your assumptions regularly, or your adversary will do it for you.